rip the storm apart. That's what we want to see. We want to see this continue to weaken. And even when I kind of enhanced our radar to see a little bit more of kind of the broad moisture, definitely that broad circulation, but this is now confined to more the low level, so it no longer has that ability to grow in the atmosphere. It no longer has that outlet for these storms to continue to intensify, so they will continue to weaken. Now we do have the flash flood warning continuing on the South Shore, but that is not because we are adding to the problem. It's just that it takes so long for all of that water to clear. And this is more of a heads up. We don't want you trying to drive in this through the night tonight. And again, a lot of power outages in JP. You cannot see where the road ends and the canal begins. So just stay off the roads until tomorrow morning, and really until we kind of get the all clear. Radar estimates anywhere from over 5 to almost 8 inches of rainfall. And I guarantee there are probably a few pockets of higher numbers than that. Thankfully, we really didn't see that continue onto the North Shore. As those storms were getting weakened and ripped apart, the rainfall rates were coming down. The rainfall totals were also not adding up to nearly what we saw on the South Shore. And actually, as a matter of fact, let's take a look at North Shore numbers and get you kind of a radar estimate of what we have seen thus far north of the lake. Certainly some pockets of some very heavy rainfall, and may have had some areas of 6+ inches of rainfall. So that is kind of surprising, because we are not getting the reports of the flooding north of the lake. So according to the reflectivity estimates, now again, this is the radar estimates, we're looking at 4+ to 6.5 inches of rainfall. So that almost coincides with what we saw on the South Shore, but thus far we have not heard of, and actually I've been chatting with a number of friends on the North Shore. None of them have reported any flooding, and as a matter of fact, they had the gusty winds and the rain, but that was about it. I'm sure there was some street flooding, no question about it, but certainly not the extent of which that we saw in Jefferson Parish. And also, thankfully, on the North Shore, what had been under a flash flood warning, we are starting to see most of that rainfall, and that includes from the Hammond area, so southern Tangipahoa Parish across southern St. Tammany Parish. A lot of that is starting to wind down. Still some areas heavy across northern St. Tammany into Washington, also including kind of the extreme corner of Hancock County, and then into Pearl River County, with this ongoing moderate to heavy rainfall. Flash flooding likely, street flooding probably the greater concern. Again, both sides of the lake, this is not the time you want to be trying to drive around and assess the damage. And while we do appreciate the pictures, we'd rather you just stand out on your front porch, kind of videotape that, take the picture, and send it in to us. Stay safe. Do not go wandering around some of the neighborhoods to try and get better pictures. We will see enough during the day tomorrow. 7.32, these are the official numbers. 7.32 inches of rainfall at Kenner. Now, Slidell reported almost 4 inches of rain, and you can see from our contours kind of just below this, the contours are generated by the radar estimates. So clearly there are areas of likely higher amounts of rain in between a lot of these weather stations. So definitely a big rainmaker. And I will admit, this never appeared to be a big rain event, as it looked like we were not going to see dramatic accumulation totals because we were expecting the storm would move very quickly. Something that we probably will need to look back on with future storms is the interaction with that dry air, but more so the wind shear. While the storm was trying to move farther to the north and northeast very quickly, that wind shear almost in a sense kind of slowed it down and started to spread that rainfall. That's kind of what helped to stall over the city, and then slowly, painfully slow, move from the river parishes. We heard the parish presidents in St. John, how painfully slow it took for all of St. Charles, excuse me, to move all of that rainfall out, including across the metro area. That, again, rainfall totals, rainfall rates, there is not a pumping station in the world that can handle that kind of water and get it out and off of the streets. Thankfully, though, we are starting to see those totals come down. And while there was some damage in a number of homes, it probably could have been a lot worse had the rain not ended when it did. Still getting the wind gusts. A lot of folks are, I think, a little bit nervous with trying to go to bed and hearing the winds. It's going to still be pretty blustery through the night tonight, still gusting up to 40 41 miles an hour at Kenner, gusting up to 55 at Lakefront. Sustained winds have been 23 to 35, and still not quite as strong on the North Shore because, again, these storms are weakening as they pushed into our North Shore and Florida parishes. Now, as we go throughout the night, again, what is now just basically low-level circulation will be pushing farther north. And now that those storm tops are gone, you're really hard-pressed to find really strong winds associated with what is almost not even a hurricane, or excuse me, not even a tropical system any longer. It has lost any upper-level support. And the model's in decent agreement and fairly accurate with the presentation of where the heaviest of the rainfall was, a little bit more removed to the northern and somewhat eastern side, but you also had some of that kind of building around on the western side as well. The dry air was kind of trying to push the moisture off to the east, then the wind shear was trying to push all of that moisture off to the east, then the drier air was trying to wrap it around to the west, and it was kind of a battle to see which one of those would win out. Looks like maybe the wind shear won out more so than the dry air, but then the dry air started to kind of cut off that moisture and started to weaken the storms as they moved northward. Not only that, the strong wind shear started to help weaken these storms as those taller cloud tops were just being ripped apart. So through the night, we will see improving conditions. Folks on the North Shore are asking, when are we going to be done with the rainfall? Probably won't be until maybe after about 1:30, 2 o'clock. We're here at midnight, and there's still a rain around on the North Shore. So it's probably going to be another couple of hours before all of that moisture is to your north and then steadily drying out through the night. As a matter of fact, speaking of the North Shore, looking at all the rivers, we are expecting them to kind of rapidly rise through the overnight, and most will start reaching moderate flood stages at some point early to mid tomorrow. Most of them will drop very quickly by Friday or Saturday back below flood stage. The Pearl River is going to be a little bit slower. It's a larger river, so it's going to be a little bit slower to kind of climb up to flood stage. It'll probably hang there through the weekend and then slowly start dropping through next week. So kind of what we're looking at on the North Shore. And the river forecasts are also tricky because it really depends upon which of the basins get the most rainfall through the night tonight. So some of those forecasts could dramatically change. Hopefully for the better, that we're not going to see them kind of spike during the day tomorrow to moderate flood stage, but hopefully maybe a little bit less than that. But Weather Service kind of put in there the caveat that this forecast could dramatically change tomorrow. It'll just yet to be seen how much rainfall we see across those river basins during the course of the night tonight and into tomorrow. So that will affect the flooding along our North Shore rivers. And again, the Pearl River is going to take a little bit more time to rise to flood stage and a little bit longer to drop back below flood stage. So we're getting into the rainfall on the North Shore at the moment. We've got the drying period on the South Shore. Thank goodness we have seen that break before even more of the homes and businesses around JP started to get the high water. That thankfully started to recede, as a number of officials said, just about before we were at capacity of the streets. As Scott Walker was mentioning, the streets in Jefferson Parish are kind of designed to flood. And we do tend to see that anytime there are big downpours, JP streets do tend to flood, and they kind of hold the water, and thankfully it doesn't get into the homes on most occasions. And we were starting to get to that level before the rain finally started to end. Water kind of held and then slowly has started to recede. So we are seeing some improvements. I know slow for many. They want to get that water out of here. You just need to give it a little bit more time. But conditions are improving across the South Shore. And when you get these radar estimates of over 7 to 8+ inches of rainfall, it is just going to take a little bit more time. As far as the North Shore goes, we are getting a little bit more of those breaks in the rainfall across much of southern Tangipahoa Hope Parish and southern St. Tammany Parish. That goes into Hancock County. And then for the northern part of St. Tammany Parish and into Washington Parish, rainfall continues. But as I said, these are not the rainfall rates. These are not the intensities of what our storms were on the South Shore much earlier. As we were looking at back on satellite, the storms themselves, the tropical storm Francine itself is getting ripped apart. That dry air wind shear, we were kind of hoping maybe it would take over a little bit sooner than it did. Unfortunately, it didn't do it fast enough before we got those heavy rains. And so it really ended up being, and that's why these storms are so tricky with forecast. What of the impacts will be the greatest? Is it all of the impacts? Is it one or two? We thankfully, and Alexa Trischler was kind of looking at some of the gauges along our coast and lake, and thankfully most of the gauges had been reporting not excessively high storm surge totals. I think while we will have had and did have certainly some storm surge, I don't think, at least based on the preliminary data, that is kind of reassessed a little bit later, preliminary data, we don't really have the real-time storm surge numbers that we do for other weather parameters. So it looks like, as we later assess it, it wasn't possibly as bad as what we had thought it could be. So that is one good piece of information. It may be because Francine kind of struggled to really gain any strength, so before it was able to build up much of a surge, at that point it was already about to move inland, so it really didn't have much time to build up a huge surge. So thankfully what we did see is about as bad as the surge will get. Now it is still kind of piling up in a Lake Pontchartrain, but as the storm itself continues to weaken and those winds aren't nearly as strong, we should start overnight tonight, if not, well, it's already after midnight. So through the early morning hours and continuing through our Thursday, we should start to see that water receding and leaving the lake, getting pushed away from our coastline. And thank goodness that wind shear, what had been those more intense thunderstorms over the South Shore, as they move north of the lake. The rainfall is still there, but those cloud tops are getting ripped apart. So that is what is doing, that is what is helping us out, is that wind shear kind of ripping the storm apart. And that's why I'm saying, as you look into the mid and upper levels, what we're looking at with a satellite just does not have the characteristics or the signature what you would look for a tropical system. That rotation is only down at the surface, which is why we can only really find it on radar. So it'll be interesting to see. Again, as of 9 o'clock, or actually after 8, so the 9 o'clock, we stopped getting hourly advisories from the National Hurricane Center. They decided to go back to what they normally would issue, so the 10 p.m. we will get another advisory at 1 a.m. So in the next 50 minutes, we'll get a new plot of where the center of the storm is, new coordinates, new maximum sustained winds. And then we're not going to get into the forecast, which at this point it's almost meaningless what the 4 o'clock advisory will say with regards to a forecast. And hopefully by 4 a.m. the center of what is kind of left over from Francine will already be well up to our north and moving further into southwestern and central Mississippi. So we will start to see and continue to see improving conditions across the area. Already getting a bit of a drier period around the South Shore. Winds are still brisk. We'll look back at those winds right now. Let's take a look at the winds, because a lot of folks are still asking, you know, thank goodness the rain is gone, but we're still getting these winds gusts. And yeah, I will say it's kind of scary when especially if you're in a dark home and it's kind of quiet, and then you get these wind gusts of 40 to 50 miles an hour. They have been diminishing. It takes some time. This is a lot of energy. Even with a fairly unorganized and weaker hurricane, it is still a hurricane, and you still get that fairly significant wind field with these storms. And so it does take some time for those stronger winds to begin to relax, to begin to wind down. They are certainly much lower than they were earlier in the evening, but they will take some time through the night to continue to diminish. Now, at the moment, winds gusting 40 to 50 miles an hour, some of our strongest around the metro area. Doesn't look like we're going to see winds gusting quite that strong north of the lake, but still at times pretty brisk. I mean, they're at 43 miles an hour right now at Slidell. We'll see what happens as the storm center kind of pushes a little bit farther to the north. It will continue to bring those stronger winds farther north, but as of right now, it doesn't look like that will continue, the strongest of the winds, to move any farther north into Mississippi.